I'm not really sure what to make of this lamp. It projects this continuously changing sort of mishmash of random symbols. And if I bring it down, you'll see the sort of scale of the effect, that it's basically clumps of each colour passing round and continually just morphing in and out. It's an interesting effect, I suppose. Ultimately, it adds colour to a room, and it certainly adds movement. But let's take a look inside it and see what makes it tick. So the unit draws 3.3 watts, which means it's probably got one of the classic, 3 LED arrangements inside with the 3 watt switch mode power supply. And it's got this sort of, I notice this case seems to be used for quite a lot of different effects. So let's unplug it actually. Let's just open it right now. This does seem a bit sloppy, and it does occasionally make sort of scuffy noises as it's going round. The screw is recessed quite down, actually beyond the point which I'll get my little mini screwdrivers in. So if I undo that screw, the outer dimpled lens comes off. I'm not sure that adds an awful lot to it. I think the bulk of the effect is from this, which is basically a plastic disc printed black with all these sort of different sort of patterns on the back of it. And then the next disc in front of it is basically 4 moulded lenses that then, as it passes in front of each of the LEDs, the LEDs also have reflectors in them as well. So we've got the 3 sort of collimated beams in LEDs, then being focused just as the lenses pass in front. We've got 3 of the lenses, but we've got 4 lenses in here, which is why it's all very sort of random and going across in clumps. And then they've just basically filled the back with just everything. It's chock-a-block with images. So let's take a look in here. Let's unscrew this. First time I've seen the focus lens, it does make me wonder what would happen if I just put that on, but I don't know if that would just scuff. If I'd have to use packers that would just scuff otherwise. When you look at that lens, it looks as though it's the typical sort of version that projects dots all around the room. Okay, so unusually, the motor is not actually screwed onto the LED plate. The motor has got its own plastic mountings in here with the little switch mode power supply just shoved down at the back there, loose, which is reasonable enough, that's how they often do it. The motor is tapped off. It's tapped off one LED again, this one. And fundamentally that's it. It just differs from, normally the sort of like what would you call it, the sort of vomit whirlpool lighting effect has just this circuit board with the LEDs and this sort of pattern lens in front of it. But by adding these, it kind of, I would say it reduces the output considerably. It's not as efficient as just having something like a huge lens in front of all the LEDs. But it does produce an interesting effect. Oh, the listing this came from, it was described as, let's tame this down a little bit. Colourful auto-rotating RGB LED bulb stage light party club DJ. It doesn't really, that's going to bring up a lot of things, isn't it? But the main difference is it shows the sort of picture and the sort of effects that it creates on the walls here. It came from, oh right, okay, that's an easy one to pronounce. 25 water food. Okay, reasonable enough, 25 water food. But it's interesting, but to be honest, I don't think it's as good as the ones that are just the sort of rippled lens in front of the LEDs. It's interesting that it projects those images, but it's just a little bit too cluttered, if anything, and this creates quite a just massive movement, which I suppose some people might want. It certainly is interesting just looking at this, just the sheer number of different symbols, from wee lightning bolts to planes to stars, hearts, butterflies, what looks like a marijuana leaf, dollar symbols, looks like a Canadian maple leaf. It's just got everything. It's just crowns. It's got everything on it. They've just absolutely gone clip art crazy on this. But yeah, interesting, certainly worth taking a look at. So just out of interest, I removed this completely, added a little spacer, so it's just this sort of rippled lens in the front of the focused LEDs. It's kind of still a big mess of like me out the front. It's not as defined as the other units that just have the bare LED, because, well, in this case it's focused into quite significant sort of beams of light. I suppose ultimately then you could go further, you could actually just remove the reflectors off it as well, but I don't know. Again, I get the feeling this is another of these products that the motor is just going a wee bit too fast, it's making just a wee bit too much movement, although having said that, everybody has their own idea of what would create the perfect sort of ambience. For me, I prefer much slower movement just for a more subtle, laid-back effect. But yeah, it's interesting. It at least gives you options that if you had one of these lights, you could change the effect from it. And just out of interest, I put the pattern disc back in with its lenses, but just left the outer cover off, and it makes a huge difference. This does add the final focusing of all those images. Without it, it's just a blur. It doesn't really show you the graphics too well. Though, having said that, it's a visually interesting effect with this as well, and ultimately it just adds another effect if you want to play about with it. So quite a fun light just to play about with.